Okay, welcome back. We're going to do another ship tour because they're quick and easy to make real quick. So this is the Battleship Thunder. She's coming up in the next video as one of the vessels that comes into the port. This is my battleship. We're going to put a brow on there one day. Her entire design concept is that my fleet is a green water navy. I don't have a lot of ships, and I don't have a lot of personnel to man them. So to make that work and be feasible, I needed a vessel that had a lot of firepower, dealing with sci-fi ships from space engineers and areas at war, but I also needed a ship that was capable of operating on its own. We need to see a little modifications here that I'm trying and experimenting with, and they're not going well, obviously. But I'm gonna give you a quick little tour of the vessel here. So we're up here at the forecastle. We got some anchor stuff here for some greebling. There's going to be some changes up here soon, so hopefully we'll get this a little bit more working. The ship has 3 massive 16-inch guns, similar to an Iowa class. Her design concept is an Iowa class mixed with a Tirpitz class with the hull and the engineering sections, mostly just to save on costs and how much it costs to produce her. But she has mostly American weapon systems. One of the build rules that I obey is that all the spaces, as much as I can, are ventilated and have airflow going down to them. So you'll see a lot of these ventilators pretty much everywhere. There's whole spaces just for moving air around. So if we go to the turret 1 here, I'm going to show you another one of the special features here. These 2 hatches cover up a ammo hoist, which allows me to transfer the heavy 16-inch ammo into a loading area for the magazine. And then this is an escape scuttle, so I can just go straight down to the magazine. She has 4 30mm chain guns scattered around the boat. Those are basically the crew serve weapons. I did an interesting armor layering technique. So underneath this is just blast armor, and then I added the teak decking on top because 1, that's how real battleships do it, but 2, it adds this extra layer of protection. In some areas it doesn't, like over by the splinter bar, but we'll deal with that when we get there. Honestly, I think it looks pretty great as a standard. Over here we have turret 2, another ventilator, and then the main superstructure. I think we're going to do the superstructure first before we go down further into the depths of the ship. So let's go ahead and head up. Okay, so this is the pilot house. You'll see a lot of that in the upcoming video, but this is the, where you control the ship from. There's a little bit scattered on controls here. I'm still kind of figuring out what works best for this ship, because I'll be honest with you, most of the time I spend on the ship is in combat, because the combat center has direct control over the guns and the weapon systems, and most of the time the ship is at sea, it is fighting. So I don't really spend a lot of time up here, and so the displays, the consoles and stuff like that, they're not really all that well fleshed out. We do have a few little extra greeble things, like this is the chart room. There's supposed to be a reference computer here for the navigation systems. I'm going to move that back there to where it's supposed to be. This is the chaff and flare launchers for the starboard and port side controllers, so that's where they are. Just didn't have enough room to fit them. Here we're out on the bridge wings where you can look out. We'll head up one more frame. We have 4 Sea Whiz turrets to protect the ship, and then up here we have a basically an observation bridge. There is also control up here, and then we can access the mainmast from up here and continue all the way up to the mainmast. It's one of the few ships that I have that has direct access to the mast where you don't need a jetpack. I do hope to keep that up because that is very helpful. You see these holographs saying, this was a weird experiment I did to try and get signal flags. It didn't work so well, but I'm still experimenting with that, kind of figuring it out. I did see that it did work really well for phone and distance line for refueling, so I might show that up there again soon. You can see the arrestor cables for HF, the HF fan wires here. Pretty good. The Armco flag flying there. We'll head back down because this is what's basically it for this deck. This ship was built before some of the passageways came out, so the ship's interior is so large it still gets upgrades every now and then. So I kind of like some of those spaces still doing that because it makes it feel a little bit older and dated. Here we have some of the flag staterooms. There's one of the admirals and captain's stateroom, so have a little nice. They have a nicer accommodations than most of the crew on the ship, and it's basically the same on the other side, more or less. I'm the captain's stateroom's over here. This is more of a flag officer or guest stateroom, possibly even an XO, but this room is not getting finished yet for a minute because it's just rebuilding at this point. They have direct access out to the main deck, so there's that too. So it pays to be a flag officer on board a battleship. Go ahead and head down. Oh, missing a ladder, so I'll just have to fix that later. Must be a tall ladder. Oh well. We're going to go ahead and head down. This is the ship's wardroom. You'll ignore that computer there. That's mostly there because she was in the middle of a refit as well when she got here. So this is just so I had a map to reference parts that I was changing. But yeah, this is where the officers usually eat. There's a galley over here, which again, still being refitted, but there's a storeroom back there and access and stuff like that. Got a couple of officer staterooms up here. Nice staterooms. Some showers. Access to an escape scuttle that goes to one of the lower spaces on the ship, and another stateroom on this side because it's weird. I'm gonna go ahead and head aft. This is a repair locker. Every one of my ships has a repair locker somewhere in their zones. I try to keep them scattered and then marked with a red door. This one was just recently added, so it just got added. But there's going to be repair parts, patches, stuff like that is necessary to keep the ship from falling apart in combat. Moving aft here, this is one of the rooms I was working on before we moved over. This is a fan room that takes direct air from outside and pushes it inside this room, which is then pushed down further, deeper into the ship. The reason you would do this is compartmentalization. You don't want large vents going basically all the way down to your engine rooms and compromising the ship. So you kind of want to avoid that. So the easiest way to do that is to compartmentalize and just have breakaways and stuff like that. So these are both inside the stacks. This is where air comes into the ship and then comes basically down here. And you'll see where those air channels go as they go further down. Been thinking about refitting it and updating the system, but we'll get there. This is access to the missile system. I'll head back up there to show you. I think that there's an air gap here, so this needs to be fixed. Just sometimes the air vents suck air out of the space. I don't think there's a vent in this space, which is what's causing the issue, so we'll have to fix that. This is the radio room. Some of the racked computers are installed, not all of them, so the partial installs here. Modifications, stuff like that. Just not a full system. This was more in my... this is before I came up with a standard for most of my computer systems. Yeah, there's no air in this gap here. Moving... We're about, like, all the way through the superstructure here, so we'll... yeah, there's no air in this section. I'll have to fix that. Probably put the vent over here. This whole section is completely depressurized. Anyway, so we'll move back from where we started heading up, and I'll just kind of go through the main deck. So this is the wardroom access. Over here you also have the twin barrel 5-inch guns. I have 4 of those. This would be the boat deck. I haven't installed a crane yet because I haven't really standardized what kind of boats I want to use yet, and the cranes that would need to be used and installed. Shore power connections, which will be utilized here hopefully soon. And then if we're going to head up here, and I'll show you the missile deck. We have 2 anti-ship missile launchers and then a vertical launch missile system. I'm going to have to definitely put a crawl space or something like that over there so I can go over. We have there's a couple of missiles in here. Mostly it's cruise and anti-air missiles, but they're not really all that versatile because she is a battleship after all. She's not designed to fight air contacts. She's designed to shell targets on shore. She's designed to fight other ships, and I will admit she's proven pretty handy against flying battleships and stuff like that, because battleship's still a battleship even if it's in the air. Just because it's in the air doesn't mean it's any more capable. And this door does not work, so that's going to have to be swapped around. They're both not working. This space was for the helo deck, which we'll go and show off in a little bit. You also have a refueling station. This is the receive side. So this is where the ship would receive fuel if it was going on. But typically, due to the ship's speed, firepower, and capabilities, she's more of, and basically the fact that she's a big ship, so she has a lot of fuel on board, she's more of a sender, not a receiver when it comes to fuel. So for example, this is the unrep station for sending fuel. She would refuel her escort ships and stuff like that, and this does work. I'll actually throw a picture of a couple of the experiments that were conducted. This system does work, and it's actually surprisingly stable. And I'm honestly, knocking on wood here, surprised that Clang has not punished me for my evils of whatever abomination this machine is. But it is controlled using this little controller here, and the idea is that this extends out and then connects to the other ship, and then they refuel. This is only fuel. This can only transfer fuel. There is another version that is on a cargo ship, at least in theory practice, but that one can send pallets and munitions. So this one can only receive fuel. Some more ammunition systems. Turret 3, as we move back. This container was on board because of a refit that she was undergoing, and then this is the main flight deck. Unlike the other battleships, like the Iowa classes, this one has a more of a Kirov style aircraft flight deck, where the flight deck can be raised and lowered as an elevator to store aircraft inside the ship. So we're going to go ahead and head down. Oh, another missing ladder. So I must have been missing a ladder on my installs. So there's an air vent issue, so we're going to have to fix that. Yep. Okay, so that looks like the barbette. Must have been a food system mod. Like I said, the ship was in the middle of a refit. I ported over, some mods didn't make it, so we'll have to fix that. This is the main mess decks and galley. A lot of missing parts over here. Must have been... I'm not even sure what that was. What's missing. But just an excuse to upgrade the ship some more. And head down. This is the main hangar and flight deck. The idea is that you could store 1 large aircraft in here, or 2 small aircraft, most likely drones, and the whole deck can open up, and this can raise up onto the main deck, and you can launch the aircraft. It's actually been really stable. I've not had any issues with it. I did note that if you are building flight decks and aircraft, do not, and I mean this seriously, do not put a mag plate on the flight deck of the ship. Do not do that. Don't do that. The reason you don't want to do that is because I've noticed that when you disconnect or connect the aircraft, the suspension gets in the way. The strength of the suspension actually causes an issue. And if your flight deck is like this, where it has a piston on it, it causes some issues. And if it doesn't, you at the very least, you're going to damage the aircraft. At the very worst, you're going to lose the aircraft and possibly parts of the ship. So just do yourself a favor and do not put a mag plate on the ship. What I've been doing is I've been putting a mag plate underneath the aircraft, and when the aircraft touches down, the suspension drops and allows the it allows the ship to it allows the aircraft to basically touch down, and the mag plate then touches down. Again, this was areas that were being refitted. This is going to be medical, most likely, due to the proximity of the life support system. This is the CEC. Got some consoles that are missing in here, but we're doing an upgrade, so the ship needs to get fixed up and finished up. You can see a distinct layer difference when it comes to armor. So this recently got an armor upgrade. These are the control systems for the unrep station. Here's a, based on my location here, I think this is another repair locker. This room we have central. This is where you can control the ship's engines. We'll go down to the engineering deck here soon. This is the crew serve mag. So there's ammunition, storage, stuff like that. I gotta really figure out what's causing the air gaps. Moving aft, you have a fan room back there. There's another fan room over by central. And then this is the main berthing area. There's some gaps because I'm still working on it, but this is where berthing is. And you can see where I was experimenting and building this up. It actually looks really good. I like this, and this is kind of going to be the standard for my berthings. So we'll get that installed and fixed up here soon. Right here, you have a general workshop, which has two big machines that are capable of doing a lot of repairs. So you have the extruder and the wire loom, and then a basic assembler here so that you can basically get enough materials to do stuff. I'm thinking about a future upgrade making a smelter at least so that you can repair bigger problems and get iron back out of the damage. This is a computer room. So for the AI modules and stuff like that, because these ships are designed to operate independently. Moving forward, you have access mostly to the main guns in these areas, and then we start moving down, unfortunately, but we'll get there. Moving forward even more, in this room, you have this is the sonar control room. The Battleship was so large that I was able to actually experiment a little and put in the first generation sonar on board. So this is a sonar control room. It is still the first generation sonar. So the system still works and still does the basics. The access to the dome is down here, which we'll go to in a minute once that door opens. And then this room was kind of getting fitted out. There's a lot of space on the Battleship to play with. This was the bosun locker, and you can see where the vent trunk kind of goes down into that. There's access from the forecastle. Not a lot of ideas to play around with in here because it's mostly just storing for rope. Access to number 1 barbette is over there. And then as we go down, I'll show you the lower decks. And this is the furthest forward lower deck. Well, again, a lot of playroom that I haven't messed with yet. This is most likely going to be a storeroom. But this is access to the sonar dome. And then you can see here the first generation sonar. It's not very complex or complicated. The newer arrays are phased or direct or have a folding array. This is just the bare bones basics. And yes, I'm showing you the bare bones basics right now because, you know, you're going to see the more advanced stuff when ships start coming out of the water. Right here is the forward collision bulkhead. So in case you lose a section of the ship, this is basically the section that's designed to be lost. There's another collision bulkhead up here, so a lot of armor and stuff like that. I'm going to show you the barbette, and I won't show you the other three because they're basically the same. This is the main barbette for turret number 1. Not really much you can do in here aside from maintain the gun, so you can see the loading systems when they're working and you're reloading the gun, so that is pretty cool, but not a lot in here. Most of this is armor all the way around, so just to protect the guns. And then we're going to go to our second underwater space. What I'm doing for at least a general layout of the ship, the easiest way to do it is you have the top side space, and then underneath that you have a main deck that's capable of crossing from all the way forward to all the way aft, and then underneath that you compartmentalize. The main deck accesses the lower decks, and that's kind of what they would call a DC deck. So you can walk around, you can do maintenance, and this is how you would access below the waterline. This ensures maximum survivability if you take a hit. And then here you can see the bottom portion of the loading station, not the loading station, the ammunition hoist. So you can see some ventilation down here, but this is where you would send ammunition down and then back up to the main deck. This is one of the magazines for turret 2, and then this is the forward magazine for turret 1. I don't like their proximity, but you can see I put a lot of armor and in the hopes to prevent a massive blowout in the main magazine. Moving just aft a little bit more, you have our first engine room. This is engine room number 1. Because there are 3 propellers, there are 3 engine rooms. So here you can see the first engines. They're an older generation setup. They're not very powerful. In fact, they're only capable of 20 megawatts instead of the typical 30. There might be an upgrade coming out for these things, hopefully soon, because they're a little bit wimpy. I don't use the gas turbines on these bigger vessels because they have enough room that you can just stack them up. You can see just kind of a little basic engineering layout of how it all kind of works. I try to keep the ship engines kind of laid out in a way that you can understand them, but control them not just in the engine room, but topside, outside the main deck in case there's an issue, and then in CCS. This is one of the load centers. I don't use batteries the way they're supposed to be used. Instead, they're basically just power systems, so you just discharge and then recharge. That's it. I discharge energy when I'm using them, and then I recharge them fully, and then the main engines are actually what provide me electricity. If I ever get below 10%, the ship's designed to basically black out, and then I have to figure that out. But here's one of those control panels that's outside the engine room to control the engines in case you have damage to the space. We're going to move forward, head down to the next below the waterline section. I think, yeah, I had to panel this up. I had to panel this up before we got underway due to the lack of a door. This is the forward auxiliary room. There is a generator here, which provides 5 megawatts, not the 10. This is just for import operations. It just basically powers the ship import. There used to be a water system here. There used to be two water systems here, but the Apex kind of ruined that, so we're going to try and figure this system out before we put anything else. But this is basically just a very small generator room. Alright, we're going to head down even more and head down to the main engine spaces. So like I said, there are three engines on there are three engine rooms on this ship because there are three propellers. So this is engine room number 2. Again, they have wimpy engines. They're not very powerful. There's load center number 2. You got another 20 megawatts here. And yes, I do use the hydrogen engines. I kind of disobey the laws of thermodynamics. I am thinking about changing that, but I want to make sure that when I do change it, I don't lose these ships. These do have high compression tanks, so they do last longer. I am thinking about what the idea is that I'm going to make a fuel refinery that refines hydrogen so that I can still use these ships, and then once I have that, I'll pop over. And I still have some tanks and stuff like that that I need to install, and some vehicles that possibly need to be designed to do that transition, because I do not want to lose power to these ships and have to deal with the nightmare that would be keeping these things operational without gas. Looks like another ladder missing. This is Shaft Alley. Here you can see one of the propeller shafts. Another one of my house rules is that if you have an engine that's dedicated to providing horsepower to a propeller, you have to have the engine coupled to a propeller shaft. So this goes all the way aft, and that's basically all this room is dedicated to. It is entirely just one propeller going all the way, or one propeller shaft going all the way to the back of the ship. So we'll have to fix that room here. Lastly, we have engine room number 3. One of these lower spaces. This is the largest engine room, mostly because of the shafts. So you have all the shafts trailing aft. All 3 engines are coupled, so there's all 3 propeller shafts going aft. Again, these are pretty wimpy engines, but you can see here's where the coupling is. One of the O2 generators hooked up to the main engine. So you have 3 propellers. You also have controlling units, and then load center number 3 over here. And then there's some timers and controls for the unrep stations down here as well. Yeah, it looks like there's a gap here. We'll have to fix that later. I do put filters here so that only hydrogen goes through the fueling stations, so that you don't accidentally fill the containers up with the connectors up with ice, and it sets off the metacentric height and makes you sink. We do have a few more below deck spaces, so we'll go ahead and check those out. This is one of the passageways I was experimenting with to make it look better. We're back over at the galley. And welcome to aft steering. Again, the ship was being worked on, so there's some doors that need to be installed. The whole premise was just to get her here as quickly as possible. But you have a storeroom here, access to the unloading and loading system, so that goes all the way up to the main deck. Here's your ammo hoist, and then the main magazine right here. Back here, I started to get a little tight on space with the gun and the magazine, so we're going to try and fix that in one of these episodes. And then we have a lockable storage unit. I think in this case, that one contains all my money from the previous safe. Moving here, we have aft steering, and this is where we can control the ship in case we have a casualty when it comes to steering, and then we have some stability units to help balance out the ship. But here, we can control the ship in case we lose forward steering. the smaller ships don't really have this. The larger ships do. So that's what I try to keep on the premises when it comes to these larger ships. But as you can see, other than that, she's pretty capable. She's one of the that door is really messed up. Must have fallen off. Okay, so we have some bugs and some issues that we need to fix. The ship was did just transfer over a save file, but basically this is the battleship and what she looks like. So I hope that you guys enjoyed that little ship tour, and I'll show you guys some other ships here in the future. And until then, have a nice day.